What's going on, guys? Ben Bateman here for the Popcorn Talk Network, coming to you with another top 10, and it is a very special top 10 as we are talking about the definitive ranking of Christopher Nolan's films to date. It's 2017, I just saw Dunkirk, and I have a lot of thoughts about the guy that I think is quite possibly the greatest living filmmaker. So let's jump straight into things, guys. I'm here for the Popcorn Talk Network. We've got AMA Podcast, Action Movie Anatomy, a weekly show chatting with you about the best action films. Be sure to check that one out on Twitter at AMA Podcast, and every Wednesday at 12:30. Let's jump into the rankings, guys. Starting out with number 10, we have Insomnia, the remake of the original film by Christopher Nolan, the first major big budget film he did. However, this film is made with 3 Oscar winners in Hilary Swank, Al Pacino, and Robin Williams. This film misses the mark just slightly, but does create a strong sense of suspense. It's docked many points in my book because it does not employ its talents as well as I feel it can. After that, we have number 9, following Christopher Nolan's debut film, a black and white film about grifters learning from one another, a strong first entry into his catalog, but of course a film that does fall a bit flat as it doesn't quite have the resources or pedigree yet to stand out in the field. However, as he did make it a noticeable film without really having any pedigree or anybody knowing who he was yet, it does stand just slightly above Insomnia for me. Coming in number 8, we have The Dark Knight Rises, the first one of the 3 Batman films on my list ranked the way that it's ranked. This film is exceptionally memorable for the fact that Bane is a great villain played wonderfully by Tom Hardy, one of the most quotable voices of all time. We did a lot of Bane quotes in our day, and I have to tell you, this film does fall a bit flat in the sense that it's kind of loaded with fat. It's got the Robin stuff at the end. It's got another Alfred monologue. It's just kind of a bit overlong. However, Christopher Nolan is a master, so everything the guy does is kind of incredible. The fact that this is 8th is a bit unfortunate, and I do think this film's underrated. However, there's 7 better films to talk about. I'm going to get straight into number 7 right now. Interstellar, guys, the science fiction epic. One of the most satisfying experiences visually I've ever had in a movie theater that is ultimately defined, in my opinion, by the greatest soundtrack and score by Hans Zimmer in the last 10 years. Hans Zimmer did it. I believe it is the single greatest score in the last 10 years. And about 30 minutes, the sequence where they go down to the water planet, they experience relativity in the time displacement, and then Matthew McConaughey sits and watches videos from Jessica Chastain and Casey Affleck asking him to come home. That 30-minute sequence really sells the movie for me. Most of the rest of the film, unfortunately, is kind of overlong and bloated. However, this is right on the edge of being a masterpiece for me, and is definitely a hard one to rank. Next up, we have the newest entry, Dunkirk, a film that I think is the best example of Nolan's visual mastery. He is such a master at creating the kind of picturesque images that we're so used to seeing out of the greatest directors of all time. Guys like Spielberg and Cameron, the framing, the storyboarding that we're so used to seeing from Nolan. This film employs those things wonderfully. However, the complete lack of narrative driven by any main character does make the film a little bit less relatable and does feel like the experimental experience that Nolan was hoping for. He characterizes this film not as a war film, but as a suspense film, and that is how it feels. I'm not quite sure the multiple timelines was necessary to watch in this film. However, you do walk away from the film incredibly moved and with some images that will never leave your mind. So this film does stand at number 6 for me. Next up, we've got Batman Begins, the 3rd film by Christopher Nolan, 4th, in fact, if you still include following on the list. This is the Bruce Wayne origin story we all wanted. This was Damage Control by DC after the awful entries from Joel Schumacher. This was the first proof that you could illustrate darkness with a premier character. This is a kid-friendly character in Batman, and this is a very dark film. An incredible villain in both played 2 halves by Ken Watanabe and also Liam Neeson. Christian Bale completely knocked it out of the park in this film, and this was great proof to everybody that yes, Batman can exist. He can exist in a modern day, very real format without bright colors and crazy supervillains. You know, Scarecrow being sort of a supervillain in this film, but still relatively based in reality. This film definitely did the damage control necessary, and I think it is an unparalleled origin story. This and probably Iron Man existing as the 2. Number 4 on the list, we have Memento, the most innovative film by Christopher Nolan to date. This was his breakthrough film, the film that got Steven Soderbergh to notice him so that he eventually was working on Insomnia, which got him the Batman job in the end. I saw this film in theaters with my father at 11 years old and was completely blown away. I think the film has aged a little bit. It doesn't quite have the payoff at the end that it once did, as of course any movie with a major twist at the end does fade a little bit in memory. This was originally on level in people's minds with films like Pulp Fiction, films like Fight Club, where it just changed the game. It was so influential, and I still think that it stands on that list, but a few notches below the other films I mentioned. I don't think it holds up quite as well as I expected. My last viewing was definitely a little bit, it was a slower film for me. Finally, we have the top 3, guys, and this was an incredibly hard ranking to do, and it's based on my own personal preference. So here we go. Number 3. The Prestige, the most underrated Christopher Nolan film to date. Two titans, two of the definitive actors of our generation, going head-to-head immediately in their pre-Billboard stage. We had 2 X-Men films. We had Christian Bale really coming off of a few years of major roles, but this is before Terminator. This is before 3:10 to Yuma. This is before The Dark Knight exploded the franchise to another level. The only credit Christian Bale had, the major one, was Batman Begins. Aside from that, he was a little bit more of an indie darling. Hugh Jackman hadn't exploded as a Billboard guy yet. They hadn't made an Origins Wolverine solo movie yet. He was still the guy kind of living on the Wolverine cred, and for that reason, the elegant storytelling, the incredible pacing, the fact that the rewatchability of this film and the head-to-head nature of those 2 actors sells this for me as not only the most underrated Christopher Nolan film, but the 3rd greatest film he's ever made. The unfortunate circumstances of The Illusionist coming out at the same time definitely affected this film's performance, and I don't think it gets the due it deserves. Second, guys, and this is the hardest one, we have The Dark Knight. Heath Ledger as the Joker is quite possibly the greatest modern-day acting performance. He completely changed the game as far as superhero villains were concerned. This film changed the game how superhero films ever would have been accepted. This and Logan, to me, stand as the 2 greatest superhero films ever made. The fact that this is so based in reality does make the film a little bit hard to characterize as a superhero film. It draws an incredible amount of inspiration from Heat, the Michael Mann film from 1995, and just like Heat, this film has about 20 minutes of fat that could have been cut. The secondary storyline with Two-Face, played decently by Aaron Eckhart, actually sink the movie a little bit for me, and this is why this comes in at number 2. However, the mythos surrounding Heath Ledger's death will always create kind of an enigmatic sense of this film. What was going on in his life? How real of a performance was that? The supporting actor Oscar, obviously, that he received posthumously. There is so much legend that goes along with this film, and it's a difficult one not to put at number 1. However, last on the list, the film you guys have probably been waiting for if you have the similar opinion about Christopher Nolan that I have, which is that Inception is his masterpiece. Many people believe this film should have won Best Picture in 2010 over The King's Speech. I agree this should have won Best Picture. The critical and financial groundswell received after The Dark Knight gave Christopher Nolan the cred and the cachet to make the film he wanted to make the way he wanted to make it. You don't get to make high-concept sci-fi films with budgets like this unless you've done something like made The Dark Knight 2 years earlier. Also, let's remember this film is entirely written by Christopher Nolan and directed by Christopher Nolan. There is no Jonathan Nolan. There is no David S. Goyer. This is a 100% Christopher Nolan masterpiece. Tom Hardy, Leonardo DiCaprio, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Ken Watanabe, Michael Caine, Ellen Page, a wonderfully perfect cast, an ensemble put together for the express purpose of making his dream science fiction film. And I believe this film stands above all the rest as a perfect movie, even the payoff at the end of the movie. Marion Cotillard, I can't believe I forgot to mention her, probably the most terrifying part of the entire film. In the same way that Inside Out illustrates what's going on inside your head as you grow, this movie illustrates points that we all have thought about. When you feel like you're falling in a dream, you wake up. How do you get into the scene in the dream? Nobody remembers. These are all things we've thought about a million times in our lives, and I have to say, no director has ever illustrated dreamscape or what goes inside your head while you're sleeping better than Christopher Nolan does in this film. For that reason, I believe Inception is Christopher Nolan's absolute masterpiece. Guys, thanks for listening. This has been the top 10 definitive rankings of Christopher Nolan films here on the Popcorn Talk Network. I'm Ben Bateman. You guys can find me at Ben Bateman Media on Twitter or Instagram. Be sure to like, subscribe, leave your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think are the top 10 Christopher Nolan films? Am I way off? Is Batman Begins a masterpiece? I would like to know. So guys, check out Action Movie Anatomy every single Wednesday at 12:30 and share this video with your friends. Let's get a conversation going. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.